When Reverend Brandon married Mildred and I was playing with the camera then, but I wasn't officially doing the work. When Reverend Armstrong came, I was doing a little more recording then, especially when my daughter got married here. When Reverend Mackey came, I was doing some recording, and he at one point was doing some work with the bishops. But he was doing some work, and he asked me to go with them. It was a couple of hotels that he was talking at and talking with a group, and he wanted me to record it. So I'm not going to commit myself to say it was 40 years or 30 years, but it's from Reverend Mackey's time. There's one thing about the audio video, or the ministry, I should say. I felt that this was a gift, another gift from God. Because remember, when I came from the Union, and that was such an active thing, then to have nothing to do, but it didn't happen to me. So many people, when they leave their job, there's nothing to do. In my case, I had something to do. I had the church. I had the responsibility of getting the service out for what the pastor or preachers was saying. The most important person that you should deal with, and that is the person that you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror. Because that person is the one that you must pay close attention to. That person is the one that will be with you for the rest of your life. And as that person, and when I say that person, I'm talking to you, and you will be 16 now, but you'll also be 26. You'll be the same 16 that you are at 26, but how will you handle yourself will be depending on whether you pay attention to you, and that attention should be done in the mirror, because you can see the changes. You could see the things that's in your mind. You could see what your face is telling you. You could see it. I saw it. I saw it in my growth. I didn't know what I was looking at, but that's why I could tell it to you. Even today, when I look into the mirror, I could see whether I'm proud of what I see, or I could see that I'm not as proud as I should be. And so I do know that it means something when you look into the mirror. From housekeeping aide as a shop steward to becoming the executive director of the hospital division for the city of New York, which contained about 14,000 people or members. And so I became the executive director. It's a growth. But I want you to really understand that my life is an evidence of what God could do for a person. I was working one day as on the job, and my cousin, who was an evangelist, came to the hospital, because she always come to the hospital and pray for the sick. On this particular day, she came to the hospital and she called me over. And before I could even say, "Hello, Elsie," she had my head like this in the middle of the hallway, and she was just shaking it. But she was praying at the same time. And after, I would say it looked like an hour, but only after 5 minutes, she turned to me and she said, "God has works for you. And the really serious part of it, he is telling me to tell you that you really don't have to do anything. You don't have to change." Well, that part was wonderful, because I didn't have to do anything. And so I said, "Oh, good, thank you." So she left, and I thought no more of it. Just a week later, and so Del Novas came and said, "Your name Clyde Goins?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Listen, how would you like to work for the union?" My education was never one that was so great. Why? Because when I should have been learning, I was out playing basketball, stickball, everything else. And I should have been in school doing the books. I always protected myself back then so that I'll never get put in a position where I had to read out loud or do any spelling or what have you. But it was so funny because I never thought of that. Because had I given that one moment of thought, I'd have never taken the job. I never stopped and thought about what Elsie told me. And this was a week before, that God had works for me. There's one part of happenings today that I must bring attention. I must talk about it. I already knew that it was to be a female pastor. And I thought, well, Varick has had a number of pastors. To have the first woman pastor here has to be an exciting moment. And that was what it was. And I realized that once again, Varick is going to be the greatest church in the district. Now, why do I say that? I say that because I honestly believe it. Dr. Miller is already preparing to build this church bigger and greater than what it is today. She's doing it in terms of a blueprint that most of us already seen. She's done it in terms of the service that we are all witnessing. She's done it in terms of individual meetings with individual people here. This never happened before. This is brand new. Dr. Miller has been one, to my opinion, one of the blessings that God has given Varick Church. Right now, I can say so many things that's running through my head, but it's emotional. Thank God I'm not emotional at this moment, but it can be emotional because, again, when God gives you something and you do it, and you don't stop and think and say, well, you know, this is what God gave me. When you really don't stop and think about that, you just keep doing it. Every time the Lord wants you to know that He gave it to you, there would be a reason that something would come or happen, and you would almost see the grace of God in terms of what became a problem, and the resolution to the problem was so that other people would never know that this is a problem. That's the way it was. At the same time, the work that God gives you to do sometimes come to a moment to stop. And I'm at that point. But again, my life has been blessed always from the day Auntie taught me till this moment, because I built an audio-video ministry here. But how God has now gifted me was He has sent, or let me correct something, He has grown from this church up someone that is well qualified to take this church to another level. I may step aside, but nothing dies. It grows, not die, it grows. It goes from the level that I possibly could take it to a much higher level. My friend, that's a gift of God. There goes another gift. There goes another blessing. Very seriously, there goes another blessing, because I'm still able to see. I have a tape that DC 37 did of the 50th year anniversary, and I had an opportunity to have some pretty key spots to talk to. And there's one thing I said at the end of the tape, and that was, I may no longer be here in the Union, but every time I see the Union do something, I'm there, because I grew up in the Union. You see, what that basically means today is, I may not be doing the recording, but whatever I see is done in terms of the recording in Barrack, I'm there. I'm there. And that's the way I basically ended that tape.